going to be a fun day. I don't have
Bailey's and coffee.
Top of the morning to you there. With
Top
the
of the
Irish
morning
coffee.
to you. When is
It's not here.
Isn't there a holiday with the leprechauns and all that
St.
stuff?
Patrick's Day, one of the high holidays of the year, is this coming Sunday, folks. So strap it on and get ready. The Irish will rule the world.
That's right.
Day. So and
I'm
also,
Irish.
Hey, guess what? I'm Scotch Irish. So guess what Sunday also is? Selection Sunday.
I know.
How cool is that? We got tournaments going on. We're about to hit y'all with a full court press. Lots of basketball talk. We got Mitch Davis, the MitchDavisShow.com. 500 plus in 5 years games of college football, basketball, baseball. He's everywhere. Kevin Scarbinsky, U.S. basketball writer, Hall of Fame, the only one ever from the state of Alabama, which has produced a lot of great sports writers. He'll be with us. And then the Iron Duke from Alachua County, Franz Beard, will join us as well. Look, do us a favor. Brendan's right. Smash the subscribe button in the bottom right-hand corner that says YouTube. What that does is you automatically get alerts every time we come on the air doing a show. And you can also watch us live on a lot of places like Facebook. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your neighbors, your coworkers, your clients, your patients. Sidelines, SEC, Sideline Sports Network, and SECU. And Brendan, if I left anything off, tell me. And also, I'm looking over it's over my right shoulder here, the SEC map. You can get one of these things. Barnwood Brenda, Batesville, Mississippi makes them, carves them out of Cypress. Now, one of our viewers was asking me, a Gator that you know, Brendan, said, can you get where we can see that Florida logo more? And I'm like, I need to turn this thing better. If I have to, I'm just going to get me a big Gator to put on the set. That's what I need to do.
We could probably work that out.
And do you know any Florida fans?
I might. I got so much Gator stuff.
Hey, look, I've got a Pat Sullivan jersey from 1970.
Whatever. I've got an Emmy right there with my dad's name on it.
I could bring my dad's Francis Gassner Award that is for the top architect in Memphis, his former partner. But I don't have an Emmy. I'd love to have an Emmy.
Same thing. We'll have one day.
You'll get
it. Give us a few more. We'll get a Webby.
Yeah. Well, here's what you do. You always thank everybody around you. Leaders eat last. Remember that. All right, we ready?
Right. I'm ready. Let's do it.
Play some music?
Yeah. All right. Get your pen and paper.
Sidelines with Rob Brown. Talk sporty to me.
All right. Hey, let me say this. Mitch, you got to check this place out. Bim Bam burgers, wings, and things in Oxford, Mississippi, down there on Jackson Avenue.
Donuts.
By the Regalia. He's got Dunkin' Donuts, but Bim Bam. We were there last week in Oxford. My friend Barnwood Brenda's daughter, Erica, owns it. And she's got unbelievable food, cold beer, lots of Ole Miss stuff. They've been there for like 15 years. Bim Bam, hotty toddy, gosh almighty, who the hell are we? Hey, flim flam, bim bam, Ole Miss by them. You know that song. Mitch, Kevin Scarbinsky's going to be with us here in just a moment. But you know what week it is? It's the week that we get really, really serious about college basketball tournament time. And by the way, that was terrible. That brawl in the women's game, South Carolina and LSU, they ought to be ashamed of themselves. That was
South Carolina
garbage.
South Carolina started it.
I know, but I'm saying that was street garbage. There's no place for that. And they did. They kicked everybody out except for 6 on one side, 5 on the other. What they really should have done, if it was necessary, if there was only 3 that could play 3, do it that way. But that was disgusting. No place for that. You can't keep your cool. you're going to struggle. I mean, that was disgusting. But anyway, Mitch, it's an awesome week. Where do we even start? I mean, this is like when you're 9 years old and your grandparents are over there with their damn water cake going, what do you want for Christmas, Mitch? Where do you start this week?
Rob, Brendan, good to see y'all. I am so dadgum excited about the SEC tournament. Rob, I know you'll be in Nashville. Brendan, I'm gonna miss you, man. I was gonna buy you a beer or something.
Someone's got to run the show, man. Someone's got to be at the home base,
But it'll be a fun week of basketball. I know, Rob, you mentioned the women's game. We can talk about that. Truthfully, guys, I'm excited. I'm getting texts from all of my friends up in Nashville. Mitch, when are you going to be there? What are you going to be doing? I'm like, look, I'm going to be so busy. I don't really exactly know until I get to Nashville. I'm going to be running on no sleep.
You're lucky I'm not in Nashville. I just want to tell you that, young man, because I would put my party shoes on and you would not be able to keep up with my Irish ass. That's all I want to say.
There you go.
I don't know. My southern self, man, we like to party down here in the Silks. So
I just looked on the map. He is in the South. He's in Ocala, which is the horse capital, the horse training capital.
It's just the horse capital. There's no training. It's just straight. That's all. I mean, I got a sign, Rob. If you need to see,
show me the sign.
The sign just reads. It's very simple. Welcome to Ocala, Maryland.
That's awesome.
Horse capital of the world, home of the Florida Thoroughbred Breeders and Owners Association. There you go.
You know what? You know what I remember Ocala for when I was a kid. We used to have these trips a lot. Let's say, hey, your dad's got to be in Orlando, literally. Then, like in 2 days, we hopped in the car for spring break, went down there, stayed at the Polynesian Hotel. He had to speak or listen to some AIA convention. No lie, Mitch is too young to remember this, but Brendan probably does. Your dad does. The Arab oil embargo, 73, 74.
No,
my mother kept saying, Bob, pull over and get gas. You're going to run out. He goes, Shirley, I ain't never run out of gas, and I'm not gonna. We ran out of gas. And we were out there at about 9 o'clock on a Tuesday night, and a station wagon full of hippies pulled up and gave my dad a ride. Being the architect with the Irish country hat, long hair, and a beard himself, he got in there with them and was gone for about an hour. My mother and my two sisters and I were like, we'll never see him again. But he came back and he goes, how was it? He goes, it was great. And believe me, there are such things as contact buzzes. But anyway,
he was smoking smoking that good stuff.
Who knows what he was doing? Who knows what? But bim bam, Mitch, Kevin's going to be with us in just a minute. Give me your thoughts right now heading into this tournament. Who do you think needs to get some wins just to be eligible for the NCAA? I'd start with Mississippi State.
Mississippi State. This is a weird Mississippi State team. I mean, they can beat anybody in the country. They've proven that. They've beaten Tennessee. They've beaten Auburn. They play toe-to-toe with Kentucky. They were a couple, turnovers away from beating Kentucky. This is a Mississippi State team, man, that they can beat anybody in the country, or they can lose to LSU in the first round of the SEC tournament and go to the NIT. So this is a weird Mississippi State team. Rob, Brennan, I'm making a prediction as my dark horse of the SEC tournament. It's Arkansas. I love what Arkansas is doing right now. I know they lost to Alabama. Things have been a little dicey. But if they can put it together this week, man, I like their draw. I like who they open up with. Other than Kentucky, Kentucky's got a kind of an easier draw, but I don't like how they have to play either Texas A&M or Ole Miss in that second round because of how those two teams are fighting for their lives right now. I mean, they have to win the conference tournament. I think A&M could get in with the semifinals or a championship appearance, but Ole Miss has to win the conference tournament to get into the NCAA tournament. Like Mississippi State, I've been watching Ole Miss all season long and covering them, being around them. Like Mississippi State, they can beat anybody in the country, or they can get beat by anybody in the country, and there's no in between. We saw that Saturday at the Pavilion, and Ole Miss got beat, by 20 plus points there in Oxford. So by Texas A&M, but they went down the College Station, beat A&M the first time in College Station. So really, truthfully, guys, this SEC tournament, I know Kevin probably will agree, this SEC tournament, it is wide open. I don't know who's going to win this. It's going to be a wild tournament. And Kevin, I know Rob's about to welcome you in, but I want to say I hope you're in Nashville because I've been wanting to meet you in person for quite some time.
Well, good morning. Yeah, good morning, Mitch. Good morning, everyone. I wish I could be there. Unfortunately, I've got other obligations that will keep me from there, but I will be watching every second I can, because it's going to be as intense and competitive an SEC tournament as we've seen in a long time.
Yeah. And Mitch, Kevin, I told you last year, Final Four weekend was inducted into the U.S. Basketball Writers Hall of Fame, but he's also great football. He's just a great writer. Scarbo knows the Birmingham lead. Be a subscriber to that. You want to, seriously, he came to Auburn when I was in college, moved from Pottsville, Pennsylvania, went to Troy and started covering, at a young age, and was working on his master's at Florida. He's got 2 kids at Florida. But y'all need to be collaborating on basketball, because, Kevin, what's going on in the Southeastern Conference in college basketball is absolutely awesome. I love football. You know that, and I know how much you do too. But these basketball games, you don't miss them anymore. It just doesn't happen.
And there are so many big games. Every time you turn around, when you think about how close we were, and I wrote this a few weeks ago, and it seemed ludicrous to even type it on the screen, but we were not that far away from a 6-way tie for the SEC championship in the regular season.
Yeah.
It was only a couple of games had they gone the other way. If Florida had won out, for example, they could have been in it. If Tennessee had dropped one more, if South Carolina had beaten them the last week, it would have been a 6-way tie. We were that close to a 5-way tie.
Yeah.
In the conference. So, and it's not a case. Sometimes when you get a situation like that, it's a sign of mediocrity. It means nobody is really that good, but that is not the case this year. There's a handful of teams that could win in Nashville this week. Yeah. There are multiple teams that could make a run at the Final Four. You get the right bracket, you get on a streak, you get the right draws, the right matchups. It's at a very, very high level. I know that.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. And I stream all the TV stations out of Birmingham, WBRC, WVTM, and 3340. And I look at what, Andy Kennedy is doing with UAB. College basketball in the state of Alabama has gotten really big. Mitch, it's like baseball, college baseball in Mississippi. Mitch, kind of take on what Kevin just said. It's not a sign of mediocrity this year. It's a sign of a good league. I agree with Kevin.
And I in 100% agreement with that. And what's crazy is when you look at the talent across this league, and look at Mississippi State. They've got Josh Hubbard and Tolu Smith. Yeah. You go over to Ole Miss, they've got Matthew Morrell, Jalen Brackenford. They've got those 2 guys. And then you go over to Alabama, they've got who they've got. All these programs have really good ball players. It's not just Kentucky anymore. And, my dad and I were talking, and he's going to Nashville with me this weekend. He's going to be there as a fan. And he was talking about, hey, I've been reading on the message boards where it's not going to be just Kentucky fans in Nashville. It's going to be Alabama, Auburn, Tennessee, Mississippi State's going to be bringing a couple thousand people. And it's going to be every SEC school taking over Nashville. If you look on the tickets on Ticketmaster right now, they're going for $100, $150 a piece per session. This is not just a Kentucky session. This is per session. They're going for $100 a piece. It is so awesome and so insane to see this conference do so well in basketball. And, obviously everybody knows I grew up a Tigers fan. My dad's side is all Kentucky fans. I grew up around college basketball. I grew up around SEC basketball. And living in Mississippi and being a part of what Chris Jans is building down there at Mississippi State, and also what Coach Chris Beard is now building at Ole Miss, and seeing the fan passion. Guys, I went to a Ole Miss game on December 30th, December 31st against Bryant. There were students on Christmas break wrapped around the arena at the pavilion just to get in to see the Ole Miss Rebels. That was when they were undefeated at home. They were on their hot streak. That is the type of passion that I want to see across the conference, and that's what we're seeing. I saw my dad the other couple weeks ago when Kentucky came down to Starkville. I said, hey, this is Mississippi State's, I think, 10th or 11th sellout of the season. They sold out for several non-conference games. They packed out the Tupelo Convention Center when they played North Texas in early December. And what we're seeing across the conference is so many people get invested into basketball. And what's so awesome as well, and I don't know about this with Auburn and Alabama and other places. But Ole Miss and Mississippi State the last 2 or 3 weeks has really given the fans the opportunity to go see the basketball game first and go out to the basketball game, pack the basketball game, and then right after they can go over to softball or baseball and have a crawfish bowl and have tailgating and all that kind of fun stuff. They're offering drink specials and a lot of great things are happening. And I can only really speak for what's happening here in Mississippi, but I see it across the SEC. And that's just what's so awesome about this conference right now. I'm so excited to get to Nashville. And guys, Rob, I know I'll see you there, but it's going to be a hell of a weekend up there in Nashville, Tennessee. I'm looking forward to it.
It is. Yeah.
Well, there's no better example of that than what Auburn has done, because historically, Auburn has been one of the worst basketball programs in the conference. Now, there have been exceptions, obviously, and I feel like I've been lucky.
Yeah.
You know, I started 40 years ago in the business at a time when Sonny Smith had really elevated that program with Charles Barkley, with Chuck Person. You know, my first year with the Birmingham News as an Auburn beat writer was Chuck Person's senior year. They went to the Elite Eight and were tied with Louisville with 3 minutes left in the game. And that Louisville team, the never nervous Purvis Ellison, went on and won the national championship. And that was at a time Auburn was going to the NCAA tournament 5 straight years. Alabama was winning the SEC tournament on an average of every other year under Wimp Sanderson, and they were making Sweet 16 runs on the regular. And, you know, and it hasn't always been that, but Cliff Ellis had a great mini run with one of the best teams I've ever seen in '99 with Chris Porter and Doc Robinson. So, you know, you can go on, but what Auburn has done since Bruce Pearl got there, and it's not just winning, it is the students embracing the team, the school embracing the students. When they built that new arena, they built them their own entrance, their own concession stand. They cater to the students. They camp out overnight, and not just for Kentucky, you know, as one unfortunate national outlet discovered with a misbegotten tweet before one game when USC came, and they attributed the camp out to Bronny James. No, it's because they go to see Auburn, and that's ideally what you want, right? You want your home fans to go to see the home team. Used to be when Kentucky came to town, if you were Auburn, when Kentucky came to town, when Alabama came to town, obviously, that they would show up and stand up and be loud and proud. But now it's every home game. Auburn has created the jungle, and it is a jungle for visiting teams. I just one loss there this year to Kentucky. So it's the passion for basketball has always been there. And again, I've been around this game for 4 decades, but it has been intermittent. It hasn't been consistent, and it has become consistent in Auburn and Tuscaloosa and Starkville and on and on and on.
Yeah. You know, we're seeing that. Perfect. And we're seeing that in the women's game. You know, I've had the privilege of covering women's basketball the last 2 years, especially being since down here in Mississippi. I mean, I went to I've been to several Ole Miss games this year. I went to the Ole Miss State game, Ole Miss LSU. A lot of attendance records being broken across the women's sport. And I know what happened yesterday, and we can talk about that if y'all want, whatever. But what happened yesterday is a microcosm of the women's game. And really, truthfully, guys, I've gotten a lot of heat, and I've gotten tired of some of the comments that are being made about Caitlin Clark or about Angel Reese or any of those players. Man, I tell you what, women's basketball is just as exciting as the men's game because it's so pure, and you've got the fans support.
I agree with that.
You've got a different generation of fans there, and I wrote this in an article, and I think I said it on a podcast. You know, I went to the LSU Ole Miss women's basketball game. You had young women out there. I mean, as young as probably 5 or 6, 7 years old out there. Miss Angel Reese going over there and getting a picture with these young girls, or yelling out some of the Ole Miss players. And Coach Yo is one of the best about it. After every game, no matter if it's a win or a loss, she tells the fans to stick around, and she comes out and takes pictures with every single fan in the stadium. And Kim Mulkey does the same thing. Dawn Stanley does the same thing. That's what the SEC has turned into. There's a lot of negative going around about football and the realignment. I wish football would kind of do its own thing. Yeah. But for every negative that's going on about football, look at all the positives that Craig Sankey and the previous commissioners have done for basketball to kind of pave this way to where, hey, Nashville is going to be a vacation spot in the middle of March for many SEC fans, or Greenville, South Carolina is where a lot of people go for the women's tournament. I know they broke attendance records this weekend. So that's kind of where we are with this conference, and it's awesome, guys. I love having the opportunity to cover Ole Miss and Mississippi State with an emphasis on those two, but also this conference that I've grown up around. It's pretty dadgum cool.
You're right. And Kevin, just like what Mitch said, I've been saying the women's game, we all know that. It's as pure a game as there is. And I worked in Channel 3 in Columbus. Coach Champy used to come over on Sunday afternoons, and Roger Manus and Reese Davis would do the Sunday afternoon show when we worked at Channel 3, WRBL News Channel 3 on your side on 13th Street in Columbus. So, and I got to be the beat reporter for Auburn. That's pretty cool. So, having been that I'd been to school there, so I kind of liked it. But I also remember something Kevin, Coach Dye said one time. Some guy, I'm not kidding you, called from Pine Level, Alabama. And you know where that is. It's south of Montgomery, above Greenville, not too far from Evergreen. But he said, let me tell you something. He said, you know your football program is good when you just load up the station wagon full of youngins and chillins, as he would call them, and you come up there, you're going to see Auburn play. You don't care who you're playing. That's what they've done in basketball. And like my son Wilson, I'm like, you going to the game tonight? He goes, Dad, I have a finance or an analytics test tomorrow. I cannot sleep outside, but that's what it became. And I was there at Auburn. We went to 5 straight NCAA tournaments. So Sonny Smith was so nice to me as a writer for the Plains. He would invite me into his office and just say, come on by and visit. You grew up in that era, and you're never going to change. You never forget the people that mentored you. But Kevin, I'm just going to just let her rip, man. Start talking about the passion of the Southeastern Conference fans and a conversation you had with former Commissioner Mike Slab that sort of laid the foundation for this, because this is gold, and people get pen and paper handy. We always joke about nobody has a pen and paper, but take notes from what Kevin says because it's great.
Wait a minute. I don't know what I would do without these. I've got so many of these. If you could see my desk, it's covered in legal pads.
See, look at here, pen and paper. I take a lot of notes. I mean,
yes, I have to write. I retain things better if I write them down rather than just typing them on the computer. But oh my gosh, I mean, I've had such an unbelievable experience being around basketball people, and that's one thing that I think endeared me to them. Look, I like football. I mean, you can look behind me. Football has been a big part of my life and my career, but I love basketball. I used to shovel snow off the playground court at the end of the street in Pottsville, Pennsylvania, so I could get shots up, thinking I would be the next Walt Clyde Frazier when I was a kid. When David Thompson and NC State ended UCLA's long run and David got hurt, he tripped over somebody's shoulder. He was a Skywalker in the second round of the NCAA tournament. He had a bandage wrapped around his head. I wrapped a bandage around my head at 11 years old when I went to the playground the next time to try to be David Thompson. So basketball people, that's why I'm friends with Wimp Sanderson and Sonny Smith and Murray Bartow. And I wish Gene Bartow and his father were with us. And so many. Chuck Person was at the Alabama High School Athletic Association Final Four last week in Birmingham. And Alabama was the first state, and I believe maybe the only state, to bring every championship to one place here in Birmingham, girls teams and boys teams, every classification. That did so much for the sport in this state. And you look at now, tonight, Samford is playing for the Southern Conference Championship. They haven't been in the NCAA tournament since 2000. I covered both of those conferences. They won back-to-back. It was the TAC back then, the Trans-America Athletic Conference. With John Brady was there. He got it rolling. And then, of course, he went on to LSU, got them to a Final Four. Then Jimmy Tillett took over. Now Bucky McMillan, who's 40 years old, is 40 minutes away from getting into the NCAA tournament for the first time. And let me tell you guys, you want to talk about great up-and-coming young coaches, Bucky McMillan is at the top of that list. I hope Martin Newton, who used to be at Kentucky with John Calipari, he's the AD at Samford, his alma mater. I hope they can keep Bucky because he's a special coach. And then you mentioned Andy Kennedy, what he did at Ole Miss. I still don't think people appreciate what he did at Ole Miss. Yeah, I've known Andy since he was a player at UAB. I saw him score 41 one year, but against St. Louis here at Bartow Arena. But everything that's happening here, they could make a run. They won an incredible game yesterday against SMU. They're the 4th seed in the AAC tournament, so they get a double bye. They could win that league, which they'll need to do to get in the NCAA. We know Alabama and Auburn are in.
Yeah,
there's just so many good things happening across the sport of college basketball, and that's something that gets me, guys. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I spend too much time going down rabbit holes on Twitter, and I saw this tweet yesterday that said, it was complimenting the women's game, but it also said the men's game is unwatchable. We don't get to know the players anymore. There are too many one and dones, yada, yada, yada. And I thought, how absurd is that? It's great. Look, praise the women's game because they deserve it.
Yeah.
But you don't have to knock the men's game or pick one up and push the other down. Both are at a high level. And I know it's different. I know guys don't stay for 4 years anymore like they used to. So I watched the Survive and Advance 30 for 30 about NC State and Jim Valvano last night. These are the things I do in my spare time. And I had a tradition when I used to cover the Final Four. I would watch Hoosiers every year.
Hoosiers.
But the game is still on. Again, the game itself, I know NIL is different. I know the transfer portal is different. But the game on the floor is still special. And we're fortunate in this state. Of course, everyone knows Alabama as a football state. That's why every chance I get, I call us a hashtag hoop state, because
I love it.
We have some proud basketball tradition here. But right now, across the board with the 10 Division I programs in this state, some really, really good stuff's happening.
Yeah. Mitch, I know you've got a few minutes before you got to go. I love what Kevin just said. And it's not – I think the women's game is awesome to watch. The point was when Joe Champy would come in the studio, you learn so much from that guy from Philadelphia, and he would always bring Stromboli and Cannelloni and Manicotti. I mean, he goes, hey, I'm Italian, I'm Catholic, I'm from Philly. I mean, what do you expect?
That's why we hit it off, Rob. That's why he and I hit it off. He was from Philly. I was from 90 miles away.
Yeah.
And so when I started covering Auburn, Joe and I look, they went to three straight national championship games. Three straight. And came up short each one. Yeah. But what an incredible accomplishment that was.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. Louisiana Tech, Stanford, and Tennessee. I remember those very well. Mitch, I mean, I know we're getting you all wound up. Now you got to go back and be super banker. Sorry, but make sure you let people know how they can follow you before you tag out too.
Absolutely. So kind of just piggybacking off that real quick. I talked to TJ Bowers, who played at Mississippi State. I did he's going to be an SEC legend this week. Talked to him on Friday. I'm going to release that interview probably on Wednesday ahead of the first round matchups. And we talked about what it meant to him to be an Alabama or a Mississippi kid to go to Mississippi State. He was originally committed to Alabama. Shared a really cool story. His mom said, "Hey, look, you need to stick with what you promised Mississippi State. You were going to come take a visit."
Wow.
Coach Stansberry drove down to Gulfport, picked him up in Gulfport, drove him back to Starkville, and then drove him back down to Gulfport the same day for that kind of the in-person visit. He said that level of the level of welcomeness that he got at Mississippi State and Starkville is the reason why he got it to Mississippi State, the reason why he decommitted from Alabama to go to Mississippi State. And guys, I'm going to be honest with you, I got to get off here in 2 minutes, but I really feel like Mississippi is on that same kind of level as Alabama was 4 or 5 years ago, where Alabama was, kind of fighting for their spot, kind of getting there. Mississippi State, Ole Miss, they have the right coaches in place. They've got the fan support. They've got a renovated hump, a brand new pavilion at Ole Miss, the breeding grounds for great basketball. And we've seen Josh Hubbard, Holy Smith, DJ Jeffries have success at Mississippi State. Both Ole Miss and Mississippi State are in great positions for the future of basketball in the state of Mississippi. And Southern Miss is really not that far behind. I mean, look at what Southern Miss was able to do this year. They fell short in the Sun Belt Conference tournament. They've had some up and downs, some injuries, but look what Southern Miss is doing down there. So I hope in 2 or 3 years that Mississippi has kind of looked in that same direction as Alabama, and I think that we're getting there. But Rob, Brendan, Kevin, good to finally meet you. I wish you were going to be in Nashville, man. That would have been a lot of fun. But Rob, Brendan, thank y'all for having me on. Y'all follow me on Twitter, MitchDavis_8. Facebook, Instagram at The Mitch Davis Show. Podcast is on Apple, and wherever else at The Mitch Davis Show, and also themitchdavisshow.com. I'm going to be in Nashville from Wednesday through Sunday. I'm going to be covering Mississippi State, Ole Miss, and then once they get eliminated, if they get eliminated, then I will be covering the other local teams around the Tupelo areas, so Alabama, Auburn, LSU. So I'll be covering those teams as well. So should be a lot of fun. I'm really looking forward to it, and I really appreciate y'all having me on today.
Hey, love it, man. Ask a lot of good questions, and your nickname is 500 plus now. So
appreciate it, guys. I love that movie.
That's for you, Mitch. That's for you. The little Hoosiers on the way out, buddy. Okay, little Gene Hackman. Come on, man. We can do it.
Y'all have a good day. I appreciate you,
man.
Thank you, Mitch.
We'll bring in Franz Beard.
Kevin, who Dennis Hopper reminds me of? Franz Beard. There's a lot of similarities. Dennis Hopper getting up on that sideline as the Iron Duke slurps on a. Y'all all remember going to 7-Eleven? Remember you got a Slurpee and you got a famous it'd be a baseball player. Like, remember the great pitcher for the Oakland Athletics, Vida Blue. I mean, I collected those things. Rod Carew for the Minnesota Twins. I love it. But, man, this basketball talk, Kevin, before we go to the Iron Duke here and bring him into this basketball, because I'm going to just watch as y'all two. I mean, this is like being up there with Beethoven and, all the greats in one place. But for him to say Mississippi is where Alabama was 3 or 4 years ago, to start looking at Alabama as a benchmark, that's a sign. 10 Division I schools in Alabama playing basketball. By the way, awesome article Doug Dean sent me written about Bucky McMillan, and I texted him yesterday. Tucker Osborne, my friend, played for him at Mountain Brook and played AAU ball with him. And Tucker's claim to fame was when Boogie Cousins was going for a slam, and he was a 5'10" point guard, got in his way, and Boogie bear hugged him and ran to the pad behind in the wall to keep from killing him. But he played for Bucky McMillan. He said, Brown, he said he was there 8 years at Mountain Brook. He took Mountain Brook, the Spartans, to 7 state championship games and won 5 of them. And y'all there's a booster there at Samford. One of my business partners, Whit Thompson, is a Samford grad. He and his wife both went to Samford. But they're trying to keep him there on Lakeshore Drive. But Franz, we've been talking college basketball. That was a rough one for the Gators to drop at Vanderbilt, but it just goes to show you all snakes can bite, and Vanderbilt didn't want to go out with a loss, although Missouri did go out fighting. It took 7 hours for the last 2 minutes of that game against LSU the other night. That was painful. But let's talk college basketball. You and Kevin, I'm going to watch and interject occasionally.
Well, Florida can look at itself in the mirror and see who the culprit was against Vanderbilt. Yeah. The Gators thought, okay, they were still basking in the glow of beating Alabama and realizing in beating Alabama, they should be 2-0 against Alabama. That there's no excuse that Florida lost the first one. The second game is more indicative of what Florida can do when everybody gets on the same page. And Vanderbilt is indicative of what happens when Florida comes up and thinks that, okay, we've got the magic woofy dust now, and we don't have to worry. We just walk out there and everybody will be, it's the Gators.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? Vanderbilt wasn't impressed. They played hard. I give them all the credit in the world. They played hard. They played up to their potential. The problem was Florida played down to Vanderbilt. And this is what you worry about when you get to tournament time, is so many good teams play down to that level. That's how you see 116 upsets. That's how you see 215 upsets in the tournament, is teams come there and they play down to the level of the team they're playing instead of making that team come up and play at your level. And unfortunately, the Gators did that, and I got to wonder which Gators will show up Thursday when they play the winner of Missouri, which is going for, to tie the all-time record at 0-19. They've done a reverse run of the table. and give them credit for that, because it is hard to lose 18 straight games.
It is.
And it's even harder to lose 19. So they're going to get Georgia, which is beatable.
Yeah.
And then they're going to get Florida, which is beatable if Florida is a no-show. So,
and Franz, if the Gators are looking ahead to another matchup with Alabama on Friday, which really they couldn't have asked for a better path through the bracket if they have their mind on their business. It's funny. Someone tweeted at me. I said something about, I don't remember what I was talking about, the SEC tournament and how many teams could win it if they're on their games. And this guy said, well, yeah, but what kind of attitude is Florida going to have after losing to Vandy? Could that sink them for the rest of the season? Well, anything's possible. But I reminded them of the all-time best story to illustrate you don't get too excited about the way the regular season ends. In 1987, I saw LSU in the last regular season game, came to Auburn, lost by 38 points, 100-62. The next week, they went to the SEC tournament final. I think that was the year Dale Brown didn't sleep, stayed up all weekend. They pushed a great Alabama team with Derek McKee, Jim Farmer, and those guys in the final. Then in the NCAA tournament, LSU made a run to the Elite Eight, where they were stopped by Bobby Knight and his phone hijinks at midcourt. And that Indiana team, of course, with Steve Alford, went on to win the national championship. So we have to be careful, I think, sometimes to read too much into one game, or certainly the last game of the regular season. It can be a sign that something's amiss, but it also, you could say, it could be a temporary thing. They were still floating on the elixir of beating Alabama the way they did down in Gainesville. If Florida's dangerous, look, we've all seen what they can do when they're at their best, but nobody's at their best every game. Can you summon that for 3 or 4 games in Nashville? That's the key this week.
So here's the thing that Billy Donovan always said that I've always remembered too. He says, tournament time is not who is the best team. It's about who wins, for example, at the SEC, 3 or 4 games in a row. It's about, in the NCAA tournament, who goes 6-0. Florida won the national championship in 2006 and 2007. 2007, they could have beaten the Celtics. They could have beaten the Lakers that year. They were that good. Mm-hmm. They ran to the tournament and they just blew people out. And they were better than everybody. 2006, however, you can say that UConn and North Carolina and Duke were better teams, but they all got upset. LSU and my buddy John Brady took care of Duke. Oh my goodness, what an upset! Everybody said, "Well, gee, that's a real upset." Well, it wasn't. They had Glenn Big Baby Davis. They had Brandon Bass. They had better players, and John, a lot of people put John down. John flat out could coach, and Lord have mercy, if you've seen his wife, the boy can recruit. My God.
He can.
But it's about, the SEC tournament is about who's going to go 3-0 or 4-0. It may not be the best team, but it will be the team that got the best draws, that got the best luck, etc. Because you could be the best team and you get an upset, and suddenly you're playing a bad team with motivation in the championship game, etc. So a lot of things can happen. And it's the beauty. It's why we love tournament time. It's why we love conference tournaments. Although I will say this, the Duke Carolina Invitational is going to be very, very interesting down in Greensboro. It's what they call the almost competitive conference, because everybody in basketball but Duke and Carolina are almost competitive. Yeah. And then you got the Big Ten tournament where 28 of their 14 teams will get into the NCAA tournament, including Tom Izzo being given a Lifetime Achievement Award with a team that with a team that would finish 6-12 in the SEC, maybe 5-13. Quite frankly, I'm looking at this right now. The team that I think is the two teams that I think are the most dangerous right now at the SEC tournament are Auburn and Kentucky. I think that if you look at what they've got going for them as far as depth, they can absorb foul outs, which you might get if you get Pat Adams on a day when he has a migraine, or you get somebody like Don Daly and he's on his period.
Hey, friends, somebody had a great comment or Doug Shows at his best / worst. Someone said, why does he pronounce it Shows? And they said because shows would be too obvious.
Yeah. Well, you know
great point.
If you ask any coach in the SEC who they want calling a game, their biggest game, they'll all say Shows. Every single one of them will say Shows. They love him because here's what you get with Doug Shows. The way he calls the game the first 5 minutes is the way he will call it the next 35 minutes. We have too many officials that call it the first 5 are one way, the next 30 are a certain way, and then the last 5, it's all hell breaks loose with them. Yeah. And that's how you get the Missouri LSU game there the other night. But you want an official who in the first 5 minutes how he's going to call the game. Ted Valentine, to me, is probably the best official in the country at setting the tone of how the game is going to be called. You're going to know, okay, do I need to get Ric Flair and the Four Horsemen and and Ole Anderson and Lars Anderson out on the court with me because we're going to do some wrestling, or do I need Belafonte to kind of swing and sway with us? And you're just going to know with Ted how it's going to be called. And this is the big fear of so many coaches when they get to tournament time, is that they're going to get a zebra crew that has never worked together. They got 3 guys randomly picked out. They've never worked together. And it seems like all of a sudden you got 3 guys pulling in 3 different directions. Yeah. It happens a lot.
Well, friends, Kevin, elaborate on that part. You get the officials. People know these guys by now. And the nitpicking calls, tit for tat. It was Sonny. I was listening to Sonny Smith and Andy Burcham on the Auburn app Saturday against Georgia. And Sonny Smith, being a coach, 9-time Hall of Fame coach from Roan Mountain, Tennessee, he was making some comments. He goes, it's getting a little chippy out there in this Auburn-Georgia game. He goes, these guys, most of them played in Atlanta or in the area around Atlanta, so they know each other. And these officials have got to control this stuff right now. I think Franz is right. We talk about in football about matchups, and always think about, but what's most important is the matchups on game day. Are they as important in basketball as they are in football, along the lines of what Fran just talked about?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Sometimes you just get a bad matchup in a tournament. Florida, for example, is a bad matchup for Alabama because Alabama does not have that size. They don't have bigs that have offensive games. They have some athletic bigs, but they don't have Charles Bediako as a rim protector, which is why their defense has been so horrible this year. They've been 1 in the country in offensive efficiency, and they keep dropping lower and lower. They were over 100 in defensive efficiency the last I checked, and that's not necessarily a recipe for success in the NCAA tournament. Whereas that's why Auburn, Franz, that's a smart pick to make a run, not only this week in Nashville, but beyond. They were in the top 15 in both offensive and defensive efficiency. They've been good. Now, they've been good on both sides of the floor consistently throughout the season. And that's why the matchups matter. And that's why, again, Florida is a good matchup against Alabama for Florida, not so much for Alabama. So, yeah, those things really, really matter. But it seems to stand out, too. The officiating, and Franz hit on it, consistency is what coaches are looking for.
Yeah.
Let me know early how this game's going to be called so my team can adjust to it. And that has a huge difference. Again, I mentioned I was watching the Jim Valvano NC State 83 30 for 30 survive and advance. And in that championship game against Phi Slamma Jamma in Houston, Clyde Drexler got in massive foul trouble. In the fourth foul, he tried to dunk over Terry Gannon, and Terry Gannon basically tackled him, put his arms around his legs. They called a charge, which was one of the worst calls in one of the biggest games ever, and got Drexler his fourth foul early. So those things matter, and have an outsized influence on how a basketball game is going to end up.
As a coach, you remember Bobby Knight was notorious for influencing officials. I mean, he did, but y'all have both been courtside a lot, and I kind of start doing some fast-paced back and forth. But Franz, when you're down there on the court, how much is too much interaction between a coach and an official before that official goes, all right, I've had it? What's the leash?
Well, here's the problem with Bob Knight. Bob Knight would sit there and scream at him, and unfortunately, the Zebras knew he was right 90% of the time. One thing about him that I learned in my interaction with him is that he was a stickler. He was like Steve Spurrier is when it comes to playing golf. There are no mulligans with Steve Spurrier. He does not play recreational golf where it's hit to you're happy on 1 in 10, and any putt within a foot and a half is good. That's not Steve Spurrier's way. And Bobby Knight is exactly the same way, or was, excuse me. He's gone now. And he would get there, and how he influenced officials so often was because he'd argue with them, and they knew he was right. They knew he was right. And all of a sudden, they started getting calls because there were things that normally they might overlook that they knew Bobby Knight had screamed at him about and that he was right about. Yeah. Then you get guys that are just really, really great intimidators. Coach Krzyzewski, looking like the weasel that he is, would get there like this, and the officials would just clam up. Got a lot of good calls. I was at a Wake Forest, North Carolina game, and this is in 1970, and Dean Smith went to adjust his tie. He got called for a technical foul by the official who said, "You said I was choking." He was turning his tie and pulling his tie down because the game was getting ready to go to overtime, and it was like something like about 88-88, and they ended up calling a tech. Charlie Davis shoots 2 free throws. He scored 44 that night, and Charlie Scott scored 43. What a great shootout! But officials do influence games, and they do it, in a variety of ways. Al McGuire was very good at getting calls his way. And he had and Al's idea was, if I get a technical foul, chances are I get the next 3 calls. And so he tried to save his technical foul for a time when he knew he needed, that he was willing. It's kind of like this idea of fouling. Now you foul and take your chance with people at the foul line because you might score a 3. Yeah. Well, Al's idea was, okay, I'll get a technical foul and give up the 2 free throws because I'm going to get the next 3 calls. And I'm going to go in there and go on that guy that's got 4 fouls, and I'm going to get the 5th foul call. That was his philosophy. Yeah. So it's interesting how it does work, but every coach has his own way of working the officials. Every successful coach. Bruce Pearl's one of the best. Bruce is unbelievable. And the reason is all the officials love him. They really do love Bruce. And they hate making a call that goes against him. They really do.
I like that.
The other hand, the other hand, you got Nate Oates, and I think every official in the league is happy as hell to make a call against him. I don't know of an official that likes him.
Yeah. Well, okay, Kevin. Now, what about the term activist officials? They're graded. I knew growing up, Mr. Joe Pipkin in Memphis for 33 years was a football official. If I was ever on the sidelines at a game, he would not acknowledge me because he knew that I was there. I'm an Auburn grad or student, whatever. I remember the Auburn-Florida State game in 1987. He did that game. He would do the big Southern Independent games. Florida State beat Auburn 34-7. The week after they beat Florida. The week before they went up to play Georgia. That's the kind of schedule you played back then. But he ran off the field and he told me afterwards. I mean, I knew the drill because I knew him. He just said, you can't show. That's what I love is when officials and judges are completely agnostic like that. But talk about activist officials and kind of piggyback on what Franz said. You may agree or disagree.
Well, coaches have long memories just as officials do.
Okay.
And they will swear that certain guys are against them. Certain guys are, I like your description, agnostic, and other guys might lean in their direction. Yeah, Nate Oates, Franz hit it. Nate Oates has earned a reputation that's not really positive among the guys in the striped shirts since he's been in the league. He's very animated, obviously, on the sideline. And I don't know if he's gotten to Wimp Sanderson territory yet, but Wimp surprised me. Wimp had that scowl, of course, but Wimp got very few technicals. He really did. He didn't get a lot of T's, whereas Nate Oates I don't know he may be headed for a career record in that if he coaches as long as we expect that he will. So everything matters. And that's what's going to be really interesting this week in Nashville and then next week in the NCAA tournament. Home court advantage has become so strong at so many places. And I mentioned earlier about the jungle at Auburn and what Bruce Pearl and the students have built there. The old airplane hangar in Tuscaloosa, what Alabama has done there, the comeback against Florida to win that game, the comeback on Saturday against Arkansas. They looked dead in the water in the second half. And then the crowd got up, the team went to another level and got it to overtime, just like the Florida game, and then took control in OT. So home court advantage has been so important, but nobody's playing on home courts anymore. You may have home crowd advantages, but you won't have a home court advantage. So that changes the game to a great degree. And also, Auburn, we have, there are 3 members of the NCAA selection committee from the state of Alabama. We did a roundtable with them earlier this year at the Birmingham Tip-Off Club. Yeah. And they were joking about how they heard Martin Newton, the Samford athletic director, is on the committee, and he was assigned, they're all assigned to a different first and second round site. And Martin was assigned to Birmingham last year. And let me tell you, the folks from Houston and Iowa, especially Houston, were none too thrilled that they had to play Auburn, a lower seed, in Birmingham. That wasn't a big deal. Iowa was an 8, Auburn a 9 seed. But when number 1 seed Houston had to play number 9 Auburn with a home crowd disadvantage because the Tigers had so many fans in there, Kelvin Sampson and company were not thrilled, and they let Martin Newton know about it. He said, I learned I had a whole bunch of new names that week talking to the Houston people. So, that kind of thing matters. And, of course, Auburn will probably be sent to Moscow this year for a regional after getting that advantage last year.
Well, it's interesting what y'all are saying about the tournament where they send the teams and all these committees. But Martin Newton, we had him on the show last year. God, he knows basketball. I mean, we all know what CM Newton did, but I just think it's really neat that we're having this discussion about how much influence college basketball, how much it's being influenced by the Deep South. And I watched Duke, North Carolina the other night, Saturday. Man, that's the Iron Bowl. It's so intense. And again, when you go to those games up in the Carolinas, they're as into it as we are about our football in the Deep South. But again, you think about what you said with Nate Oates. You think about what you said with Bruce Pearl. I'll throw another one that's interesting is with a coach like Nate Oates. Would y'all say that he runs a system? It's system basketball, and if he gets into an X's and O's match, he gets taken out of his comfort zone, that he struggles. I mean, that's what Dave Tompkins, one of our Savant Friday guys, said, and he's an Alabama guy from Mountain Brook. But I think there's something to that. But he still wins a lot of games.
Well, here's the thing with them is if they can't space the floor enough to get 3-pointers, they're going to lose ball games. Particularly now, they're 2-3 on neutral courts this year. Kevin made a good point about that. Florida's 4-2 on neutral courts. There's Florida's losses are to Virginia and Baylor. Those are their 2 losses on neutral courts. This is a different type of game when you do get on a neutral court, and when you have a guy whose whole system is predicated on 3-pointers and layups. Okay, if I've got a 7-foot, this is why Florida is such a tough matchup for them. You can protect the rim with a 7-footer, so you're not going to get many layups. And if you're quick enough on the perimeter to get your heels on the 3-point line, this is Larry Shyatt basketball. Heels on the line, heels on the line. That's where you defend the 3-pointer. Because here's the thing about it. They may still shoot the 3-pointer, but if your heels are on the line, instead of shooting from 22 feet, they're shooting from 24. Shyatt had a whole system down where he had somebody mathematically analyze it, and the difference for example, at 22-6 and 23-6, you're maybe a 38% 3-point shooter at 22-6. You may be a 21.4% shooter at 23. That's why you put your heels on the line. Yeah. And Alabama has to be able to get open threes in their comfort zone, not out of it. This is why Kentucky's so dangerous. You got some bombers there at Kentucky that they're open when they get off the bus. Reed Sheppard has no. Yeah. God. Reed Sheppard first off has no conscience whatsoever. I mean, if he's got the ball, he figures he's got the shot. And they've got guys like that at Kentucky. This is why Kentucky's so dangerous. You got 4 7-footers. You've got all this depth. I've never seen a Kentucky team, even Cal's great teams, with this many shooters. And they're hot right now. They're dangerous. Yeah. But this is the whole thing. This is why a team like Auburn is so dangerous right now. They're 6th, I think, in defensive efficiency, 9th in offensive efficiency. That tells you they can play every style. That's the team that you look for. You say, I don't want them. I do not want them.
Yeah. And the game tends to slow down at tournament time. And think back on this. Look at how good Kentucky's offense has been the last few weeks. Well, they scored 117 against Alabama. Yeah. And they beat them up in Rupp, 117-95.
Yeah.
Auburn played one of its worst offensive games in years, especially at home when Kentucky went to the Jungle. The final score of that game was 70-59.
Yeah.
Even on a day when Auburn's offense was just not there, they held Kentucky to 70. You hold Kentucky to 70, you're playing some defense because, as you said, Franz, they've got so many weapons. They've got as many offensive weapons in particular as anybody in the country. And if they get on a roll, they can win the whole thing.
Dillingham is picked 3rd. Sheppard picked 5th. Dalton Knecht 13th in these, mock drafts for the NBA. Who's y'all's SEC Player of the Year? I've got some questions for both y'all. We'll go back and forth here in the last few minutes. But, Franz, give me your Player of the Year.
Dalton Knecht is going to win it, okay? Period. The best player in the league is Zion Pullen. And I'm just going to tell you the best player in the league. The second best player in the league is Reed Sheppard, and neither one of them are going to touch the MVP.
Yeah.
But the players that are going to matter in that, the factor in it, you got 3 of them, and that is Dalton Connect is going to factor in there. Mark Sears is going to factor in there, and John I. Broom is going to factor in there. John I. Broom has been unbelievable. He is a guy that, as we were talking about, name the style, he'll play it, and he's going to be good in it. Yeah. And but Dalton Connect's going to win it.
Okay, Kevin Scarbinsky, Janai Broom from Tampa, so pretty good player. But Kevin, give us your player of the year and others.
Well, it's obviously going to be Dalton Connect. When Auburn went to Knoxville, I was at the high school state tournament, and my son texted me from Gainesville and said, Dalton Connect is the best basketball player I've ever seen. And I said, hold up. I said, hold up. You ever heard of MJ and Steph and LeBron and Kobe? He said, I'm telling you what he did in that second half against Auburn. What he outscored him? He outscored Auburn, I think, in the last
27 to 21 the last few minutes.
He said he's hitting threes, 30 feet out, guys in his face. He's dunking on other guys. You know, he is going to win the MVP. You know, Tennessee won it, and he's been valuable. But just as valuable to me, Mark Sears, what he's done at Alabama this year, the way he's elevated his game.
Yeah.
And, you know, he has really become – he went from being the complimentary guy, the supplementary guy, to being the star. And now that they've got Latrell Wrightsell back, they are a much better team with him as his running mate. And Janai Broom, how do you not love Janai Broom?
Yeah.
How hard he plays, how consistent he is. He's been equally valuable to Alabama. So all those guys are going to be on the first team, all SEC team. We didn't mention Antonio Reeves from Kentucky, how good he's been. So, again, he's just another one of those really strong weapons that Kentucky has. So your all SEC team will come from all of the guys that we just mentioned. But Connect's going to win it.
As good as Antonio Reeves is, he's the second best player on his team, which is amazing. Kentucky may have 8 first-round draft picks on that team. You think about that. That's scary good. If they all get their game together and they all get their heads together at the same time, that is scary good.
Well, think about how many schools don't have 8 first-round draft picks in their entire history
ever
playing basketball for over 100 years. And I think both of y'all and your son's not that far off. I mean, we all remember, look, 1979, March Madness, Larry Bird, the hick from French Lick against Irvin Magic Johnson at Michigan State, Indiana State game. For whatever reason, and Kenny Loggins, this is it. Make no mistake, that Dick Enberg. I mean, that was the one that made March Madness what it is today. And it's $1 billion plus deal for basketball. This week, lots of people are out on spring break. I mean, a lot of my guys on my team at work are out. It's going to drive me crazy this week. They're turning their phones off, but you got to unplug. All right, let's give a guide. Let's give some advice to people. You've got the multi-screen thing where you can watch 4 games at once. Remember Elvis used to have all the TVs. I've been to Graceland a couple of times. He had TVs up to watch all the network newscasts every night. What would Elvis have to do today with 5 zillion channels? I don't even want to guess. But Franz, I'll start with you first and then Kevin. What's the best thing for a college basketball junkie to do? And I'm hoping Bucky McMillan will text me back. Tucker gave me his number. We had him on last year, and I know he's kind of busy today. He's got a conference championship. But whoever, the article that was written that I read, by the way, was fantastic. And
The Athletic.
Yeah, it was so good yesterday. It was the writer. Do you remember the writer's name? It wasn't K Long. I can't remember the name, but it was
Kyle
so
Tucker.
good.
Kyle Tucker wrote
Kyle
that.
Tucker.
Yeah, exactly.
God, it was good. But anyway, Franz, give Joe Sixpack out there, Floyd R. Turbo American. I am Floyd R. Turbo. How do I watch all this basketball? Because it's going to be like taking a drink of water from Niagara Falls, isn't it?
Well, one of the great things about having a computer with tabs is you can have your TV going and you can have your computer with about 6 tabs with games on. That's the great thing about it is that you can do that. So, this week is just the warm up week. Let's face it.
I know.
This is the warm up week for me. For me, it's like a godsend that they'll have the SEC championship on a Sunday because they've got the ACC championship. The Duke Carolina Invitational will be on Saturday night in Greensburg, and then we got the SEC on Sunday, and they'll close it out with another boring Big Ten game, and we'll hear everybody gushing about, boy, I'll be really shocked if oh, come on. It's the Big Ten. Give me a break. They do not.
When's the last time they won it all, France? The year 2000.
Yeah.
2000.
When is the last time they won it before that?
1987.
87. They won it again in 89 with Michigan. Steve
That's
Fisher.
right. That's right.
Glenn Rice.
And Steve Fisher. They have, and if it weren't for Bobby Knight, they would have never won any. Because they were content to be a football league, and then along comes Bobby Knight, and they're going, oh, damn it, we got to play this game. We got to get our boys out there in shorts and stuff. Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
But the basketball, Kevin made a really good point. The basketball in the South, in the southern states, has overtaken the rest of the country. We had a run when everybody was from California. UCLA had the great teams, and everybody was getting all these great players from California. Why is it that we don't see great players from California anymore? Who's the last great California player that you can remember?
Aiden Holloway, guard for Auburn, was a number 2 player in the state, a 5-star. But he's playing for Auburn. I know. I'm with you. I agree.
He's playing now. Who was it? Kawhi Leonard at San Diego State.
San Diego State could be.
I'd say so. I think you're right.
That's dried up. You look at how many now great players are coming out of the state of Texas, out of North Carolina, out of Florida, out of Georgia, out of Alabama. My God, Alabama has put a lot of great players on there. It's amazing how many, a state with 5 million population.
Yeah.
And how many really great players come out of that state in football and in basketball. And by the way, we have to thank the great state of Alabama for Colby Shelton, who now has hit 9 moonshots at Florida. I mean, he hits the ball over the scoreboard and over the berm there in right field in Florida. And yesterday they put a shift on him with who is that we played? Oh, St. Mary's. That's who it was. Can't remember. It was one of those.
The Gales. Yeah.
Spectacles, testicles, wallet and watch. That's what it is. But they had the shift on. Their left fielders literally playing center field. The whole left field's out there. And so what does he do? He hit the ball to left field. He's a left-handed hitter. Some of these guys are wising up and understanding. I asked Jack Caglione last night, I said, have you thought about an inside the park home run if you hit the ball to left field? He says, I think about it every day.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm with you, Franz. This is so much. This time of year is absolutely awesome. And Kevin, just like what he's saying, we got baseball going on, spring practice. We didn't even talk about football today. Basketball. And I think last year, that term, Samford, the Gonzaga of the South. Samford's got, I know some people in Birmingham that are Samford alums that they can, if they want to, they can keep him there. But Buckyball, just get Bucky's Travel Centers as your sponsor and start selling Buckyballs in all their stores. There's 8 million people in every store 24 hours a day anyway.
Wawa on steroids.
Yeah,
yes.
It is.
Well, hey, that's why it's part of why this time of year is so great. watch the Southern Conference Championship tonight.
Yes.
6 o'clock Central, 7 o'clock Eastern from Asheville, North Carolina.
Yeah.
You've got Samford, which is 28-5.
Yep.
Best record in school history. Won the regular season by 3 games. They're in the final. They've already beat 2 teams of the 3 that beat them during the regular season in the SoCon against the 7 seed East Tennessee State, which is only Johnson City's about an hour from Asheville. So there will be some Buccaneer fans in the stands tonight. And when Samford swept them during the regular season, they only won by 3 in Johnson City. And I went back and looked at it last night. After the game, that was in January, Buck McMillan said this was like a conference tournament game. How eerie is that they're meeting in the conference tournament championship tonight? Yeah. But Samford will not, should in a perfect world, but probably won't get in the NCAA tournament unless they win tonight. Doesn't matter that they have 9 more wins right now than ETSU. They have 10 fewer losses than ETSU. But all that matters is what happens for 40 minutes or more tonight. So, and that's what happened yesterday to Indiana State. They're 28-6, but their 6th loss was in the Missouri Valley final to Drake yesterday, and they may not make the NCAA tournament with 28.
They won't. Hello,
that's the record, by the way.
NIT.
That's the record, guys, and kudos to Steve Berkowitz from USA Today. He tweeted this yesterday. 4 teams. The record for most wins and not getting in the NCAA tournament is 28. It's happened to 4 teams. 2 of those teams were coached by Cliff Ellis, our old friend at Coastal Carolina in 2010, 2011. They won 28, but they lost in the finals of the Big South tournament. So they didn't make the NCAA. I hope that doesn't happen to Samford tonight, because I'm telling you guys, if Samford wins tonight and they go to the big dance, they're going to be a 12 or a 13 seed, right about where Alabama and Auburn are going to be as a 4, a 3, or a 4.
Yeah.
I don't think. Now, Greg Byrne from Alabama is on the committee. Martin Newton from Samford is on the committee. Unless the other guys on that committee have a really cruel sense of humor, I can't see them matching Alabama and Samford in the first round. Maybe Auburn and Samford, but whoever, if that happens, when that happens, I'm going to think positive. Samford's dangerous. They are very dangerous. They play in somewhat like Alabama. First of all, they press constantly. They go deep into the bench. Everybody plays like a hungry wolf after a quarter. They play with effort, intensity, intelligence. And watch Jermaine Marshall, number 4. He's their senior leader. He plays at another level of effort and intensity, just like Bucky McMillan teaches and the way he played. So watch that game tonight. I love these one bid league conference tournaments, because it is all or nothing for those guys.
Well, and let me say this real quick. The 5-minute warning, it will be over in 5 minutes real quick. Charlie Graziano, the hype to the jump ball at the beginning of the Samford-Purdue game with the 7'4" giant. And look at people paid attention to that. But, hey, real quick before we go, let me say something. You like good-looking clothes, get out there. I'm wearing some Duck Camp stuff and a Filson Jack shirt today. Hewlett and Dunn Boot and Clothing Company on the Square in Collierville, open Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m., 6 p.m. Also, the Vitamin Shop, Olive Branch in Oxford, Mississippi. Matt Price, Justin Ross. The new location in Oxford, 3,800 square feet. You go in there, you won't get the blank stare. They know what they're doing. They know their products. They're there to serve. They're there to help you. And it is planting season for 3 weeks now, believe it or not, guys. It's March 11th. The crop dusters have been flying around here. They're getting out in the fields. They're planting. Chad House, the great folks at houseindustriesinc.com. Check them out on the website. They make all the agricultural equipment, the Betta Roller, the pulverizer, the Betta Chopper, also the aerators for catfish farms. I'm not kidding y'all, guys. Yesterday morning, crop dusters were coming over the house over here at the farm, 20 feet above the house, and they dipped below the tree line at one point in the yard here on the property. I mean, these guys are incredible pilots. So a few minutes
I thought
left.
that was the Auburn team plane.
No, it was Mr. Gimbel, the county extension agent, driving the plane around here from Green Acres.
Hank Kimball.
Yes, Hank Kimball. I love that. And there are people like him out there. Guys, we got just a few minutes. Absolutely awesome. I cannot thank you enough, both of y'all, for sharing your time with us, as Mitch Davis and our incredible executive producer, Brendan. Big Gator Martin. But God, I love this time of year. And the stuff about, like you're right, tonight at 6 o'clock, must watch TV. You got to watch what Bucky McMillan, he's 40 years old, and he grew up everything's happened is the article. Kyle Tucker, go Google this article, people. Listen, reading is like lifting weights with your brain, swimming 2 miles, or running a 10K. It's so, look how literate y'all are. And Mitch, y'all read a lot. I read a lot. Bottom line is there's so many great stories out there. Yeah, what happened in the women's basketball game yesterday? Nobody likes that, but that isn't common, okay? There's the Caitlin Clark stories. There is the stories about these women and the coaches, and they're embracing their fans. They're great stories in the men's. We're going to close out with this, saying we live in the greatest country in the history of the world, folks. Go out and bless others every day. Franz, give your closing arguments on why college basketball tournament is must-watch TV, and you, Kevin, and both of y'all tag out, let people know how they can follow you, and we'll be back and do this again tomorrow.
It's one and done time, and that's true in the conference tournaments. But for a lot of these teams, it's one and done, because if you don't win, you are done, because you're not going. As Kevin just pointed out, Indiana State, they're going to the NIT. I mean, the Mo Valley is not going to get 2 bids this year. Not when they give 37 of them to the 14 teams in the Big Ten. I mean, they're going to have bring out your all alumni team, at Wisconsin and throw them in there, and things like that. It's a matter of one and done right now, and it makes it exciting. It makes it worth watching, because you're going to see the thrill of victory, the agony of defeat, and the heartbreak of psoriasis all on one stage every single night for the next month.
Yeah, I love it. I absolutely love it. Look at the snacks and stuff. This is awesome.
Somebody's ready.
Somebody's ready. Kevin, Tucker Osborne, working down there at Montgomery. He's our friend from Mountain Brook. I went to Auburn and is an attorney down there. He played for Bucky McMillan. He said tonight, 6 o'clock, I will be watching on the color TV. I mean, this is going to be a fun game. But Kevin, let people know, because you are putting out, like Franz, tons of great content.
Yeah, thank you for that, Rob. And Franz, good to be with you. And Brendan, thank you. It's been fun this morning. And just one tip for tonight. Watch Sanford Center. His name is Achor. I did not stutter. It's Achor. He's from Australia. He's 6'9", can run like a gazelle, jumps out of the gym, has developed great post moves. He should be the player of the year in the SoCon. He's been unbelievable. He'll be big tonight. So watch that game. You can follow my stuff at the Birmingham Lead. It's BirminghamLead.com. You can read my weekly column there, and occasionally bonus columns. Then my weekly newsletter, Scarbo Knows, comes out on Thursday. You get a snippet of that on AL.com. You can subscribe to that. If you subscribe to the newsletter, you get everything I write for the Lead. So there will be so much basketball coming from us this month. You'll be able to dribble your computer around your house.
Yeah, Kevin, one of my cards was hacked. My wife seriously ordered something from someplace in China, and we got subscribed to something for $240 a month, and it was a nightmare. So I want to make sure that I'm resubscribed. Is everything okay with my deal for Scarborough Knows and the Birmingham Lead? Because I love
I got to check on that for you, Rob.
Yeah, check on that. Just text me back. But look, thanks everybody, all of our viewers, watchers, listeners. Listen live or listen later. Watch live, watch later. But smash the subscribe button in the bottom right-hand corner. You won't get this stuff anywhere else, man. Everybody take care. We'll be back in the morning. In the words of any great sports fan, too much is never enough. See you tomorrow.
In a perfect world, you'd set a health goal and results would happen overnight. In this world, the real world, it takes time, dedication, and the right support to achieve your best self. The Vitamin Shop's health enthusiasts are here to make sure you're not wasting a single moment on the wrong supplements. From the highest quality sports nutrition and superfoods to the most sought-after trends, you'll find a huge variety of science-backed solutions for every goal, and the people to help guide you along the path to greatness.
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I am Ari Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us, our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children are for sale.